Yeah, the insecurity of the ownership of the lands down here in the coastline of the Talamanca region is something very, very serious. It is causing a lot of breakup in the families because people are abandoning their lands, not even selling it. They're just like giving it up, just let it stay there and don't grow anything, don't build anything. You know, and you have make a lot of social, economical, emotional problem to people who've been living here for ever since, from when they were born. You have a man here, his name is Elisha Beckford. Elisha Beckford was born in Coweta in 1930 or 1938 or 1942. And where he lives right now, he was born right there. And that land was his grandmother's land. And his grandmother, before she died, she turned it over to his mother. And Mr. Elisha Beckford's mother died in the early 70s, and she turned it over to Mr. Elisha. So it happens now that Mr. Elisha, he's an old man. His wife is very sick, and he's sitting in a land that at any moment they will tell him, you got to go because you don't own this thing. And he was born there. Imagine, I was born in the middle part of the 60s, and my mom had to go and have birth in Panama. So how can where Mr. Elisha's mother would go and have birth in the 40s, if the only way you could get to Limon in the 40s was by boat? So people were born here, you know, and they was born and they run around and they grow up, and something that they said it belongs to them, and now it happens that it do not belong to them. That is a hard shock. That is a big one. So emotionally, how could Mr. Elisha Beckford feels? You know, and just a couple meters from his property, there's a huge and beautiful house built by politicians. You know, Mr. Elisha having a hard time getting the permission to change the roof of his house, and just one block in front of his house there is a huge construction from big wealthy people that is not from Coweta and that were never born, they was not born in Coweta. So that obviously shocked anybody emotionally, and you know, socially it making a nice and a strong community like Coweta started to tear apart. You know, started to tear in pieces because, you know, people don't want to invest, or they don't know if they should invest or not. So I went in the Development Association, which by law here in Costa Rica, you could call it where it's like a little small government on the different villages. And from there we worked very hard, and we submit to the government different times that, you know, is very important for us to be the owners of our properties, so we can guarantee a sustainable development. You know, we explain the government in serial location, you know, the importance of you know, getting straight up this situation, because otherwise an important culture and an important community like Coweta in the next 20 years or 30 years could be disappeared, because I mean there is no future. If you don't own a land, you doesn't own anything. You know, I mean, a man biggest thing he can have is a piece of land where you can build a house, where you could grow chickens, where you could plant bananas, where you could plant flowers, where you can plant fruit trees, where you can develop, where you can be free, where you can be a human being. I think the government itself is forgetting something important. and its history. And if they go back to the history, they will find that in 1915 there was a law declared Coweta as a city, and with the same design of the blocks and stuff like that. But what did happen at that moment? The government at that moment gave the village, the people from the village, 1 year so they could present their petition to legalize their ownership of the land to the governor. But before they do that, they had to build a house. The house needed to be 3 feet of floor with zinc roof. So in 1915, there was no roads, there was no radios down here, there was no electricity down here. So how are you going to get a sheet of zinc? Where are you going to get that from? You know how much it costs for someone to bring something from Limon in those days? And if you're going to build a house, you have to bring at least minimum 25 sheets of zinc. How much that will be costing you? The people here in the 1915 didn't have any connection with the external world more than what was surrounding them. You know, Mr. William Smith, then the Ferguson them came by. I mean, the Buchanan them came over. I mean, that was the only relation the people have. People doesn't know what was going on in Limon. Limon was like going to the Big Apple, you know, so
without building a house with a zinc roof,
then
people had no...
Then you didn't have the rights to go and present your petition to be the owner of the land. Most of the titles from Coweta were not in 1950. People start titling Coweta since the 1950, right? So the law that says that the 200 meters belongs to the government were in 1978, right? So from 1950 to 1978 there is 28 years in between. Okay, between those 28 years there were a law, which is the law that you can show the ownership, or the ownership of your property with only being there for 10 years peacefully. So from 1950 to 1978 there's 28 years, and people was here from even before 1950. So the government did not take in consideration that time. They did not take in consideration the history, and they did not take in consideration the law from 1915. If they would have taken those things in consideration and come down here and says to a man, how long are you living here? Oh, I live in here since 1945. Okay, then the law assists you because you have more than 10 years on your land, been here peacefully, so you want to have a title. That's the government program. That's what they should do. Part of the things that the government must do is go to the people. They go to other places and help the people to do things. Why they couldn't come down here and help the people to get their things straightened out? It is because we were different. It is because our main language were English and they wanted to obligate us to talk only Spanish. It is because the color of our skin was different, or what?